colonization and restitutions in so many countries, you will easily find out that ICOM has always been a front runner concerning this subject already in the time when ICOM was run by Dr. Ghosh. Before he became president in 1992 in Quebec, Canada, and followed ICOM's first African president, Alpha Konaré from Mali, he had already intensive experiences and a broad knowledge about ICOM's internal structures. From 1980 until 1992, he served as chair of ICOM's National Committee of India, was vice chair of ICOM's international committees for technical museums and for museum education, and member of the Executive Council. As president, Dr. Ghosh strengthened not only the communication structures of ICOM and among members. During his 2 terms, ICOM News became a regular published newsletter. He fostered also the international work of national committees when, under his government, regional alliances were established. These alliances stimulate cross-border cooperations in various regions of the world, geographically or culturally defined. It was a new development that national committees of a certain region organized regular meetings internationally and offered exchanges to museum colleagues from different countries in order to learn from each other's work and visions. Joint projects and other common museum activities started often at such meetings. Dr. Ghosh's personal example and service and leadership was strong. No surprise that he was re-elected in 1995 at ICOM's General Conference, which took place in Stavanger, Norway. As ICOM president, he was a successful diplomat, which allowed him to control complicated situations and to find out the best solutions possible. The networks he built almost 3 decades ago have served long afterwards, ensuring that he is held in high esteem for his many contributions to museum cooperation, partnerships, and collaborative actions internationally. When I was elected in 2010 as one of his successors, he was a role model for me because of his policy of transparency and participation as for strengthening ICOM's internal structures, especially for colleagues and museums from the Global South. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for everything you have done for ICOM and the international museum community. And when I had the pleasure of meeting you in India some years ago, I was deeply impressed by your professional work as Director General of the National Council of Science Museums of India. What a great professional life, nationally and internationally. You have deserved this webinar so much, and I thank the organizers for their splendid idea. All the best to you, and thanks again to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Martin, for giving such an insight into what is the contribution of Dr. Ghosh in the international community, especially in the ICOM, and promoting museum profession all over the world. Now we have with us Professor Samar Bagchi, a former director of Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, who was a contemporary of Dr. Ghosh and was recruited by Sri then Amlindi Bose, the head of the museums and a visionary, along with Sri R.M. Chakravarti, a batchmate of Dr. Saroj Ghosh. He felt that these 3 young engineers with many years to go will contribute a lot for the betterment of science museums in India for a long period. Sri Bagchi served Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, popularly known as BITM, as curator in different years from 1962 to 1979.
91.
And after that as director till 1991. Under his leadership, BITM became an important institution in West Bengal for popularization of science among the masses. Science club was started in different parts of West Bengal and a pet club was established in BITM. He was also a key person to organize the science quiz program called Quest, which was telecasted on Doordarshan. Quest became an instant success and still people remember its episodes, which was shown for more than 5 years. He also received a national award for the endeavor. After retirement in 1991, he started taking workshops for science teachers on innovative science learning throughout India, from so-called Doon school to slum school. He thus became an experimenter and a science educationist. Even after 30 years of retirement, he travels all around the country to conduct workshops for science teachers to make them aware how to change the science learning by using experiments with low-cost, no-cost materials. May I request Dr. Samar Bagchi to say a few words?
Yes. So, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to hear Dr. Hinz, whom I met, I think, twice there during the International Council of Museums triennial conferences. Now, I joined the Science Museum in Calcutta in 1962. I'm a mining engineer, and I have enjoyed these 30 years of my nearly 30 years of work in the Birla Museum, and it has changed me. I didn't do mining. I liked Calcutta, and so I joined the museum, and then I learned a lot from the museum. I became a science education activist. I'm an environmental activist and also a social activist now in Calcutta. And that grew because of my association with the Birla Museum. It has taught me all this while working. So I remember how Birla Museum was started. When in 1959, it was opened. Before that, the House of the Birlas, one of the very famous industrialists of India, he decided to give away this building and the land to the government of India to start a museum. And our chairman at that time was a very dynamic chief minister of India, Dr. B.C. Roy. And it was decided that it would be taken up by the government of India. And B.C. Roy, Birlas wanted a museum to be a display of, say, industrial objects. But then I find for the minutes of the first Science Museum minutes of the Executive Committee, I find that there is a difference of opinion between Dr. B.C. Roy and also with the Birlas. B.C. Roy had visited London Science Museum, Munich Museum, and he had seen those museums, and he wanted that the museum should be an educational institution. So accordingly, Birla Industrial Museum, education became a very, very important aspect. So I shall start with the type of work that Birla Museum has done. It had, when I joined in 1962, there were galleries on, say, metallurgy, there was a gallery on petroleum, there was a gallery on electricity and electronics, all these galleries were there. So it was basically a mixture of the science museums that we had in Europe and United States, Smithsonian and others, where display of industrial objects were there. But we, in India, we didn't pass through the Industrial Revolution. So in India, it was difficult. It was difficult to collect industrial objects and to show the development of science and technology or development of industry in India. So we stress much on the exhibits which are working, if it is also a machine, if it can be worked, and also in educational programs. So we had very little collection in our, but we gave more stress on educational programs. We had started science seminar it used to, for the students of, say, up to class 12. And it was at the block level, then at the district level, then at the state level, then gradually it came to the national level. It is a huge program that was started in I don't remember the year, but we started like that. Then we had also, to popularize science among the students, we started science fairs. Science fairs where the students from different parts of Eastern India, they used to come. It first started with exhibition here in our museum. Models being made by the students from all over Bengal, and that was also at the district level, and the best were chosen for the state level. Now, this is science fair where we had encouraged the students to develop models. Now, this was also very popular among the students in the year. Then gradually, these type of science fairs and science seminars used to take place in the different museums of India, and then it was a national program, both in the science seminar and also in the science fair. Then we had started in our museum the snake pits, poisonous snake pits, non-poisonous snake pits, etc. We had started snake pits. Now I remember the first day in the snake pit, when one of the herpetologists of Calcutta, he brought very many venomous snakes in a bag. And it was a 6 feet deep, I think it was where the snakes have to be released. So he went down by a stair and then took the bag and released it on the floor. No snake came to him. All of them went all around, and there are big structures where they all entered. So this was, snake pits were open, then aviary was made, then for the fish also aquarium was done. Lot of different programs were made. Then a very important literary year of India, he had gone to United States, and he saw in a garden that some animals were given to the children, and they were taking, say, like rabbits or any other thing. I don't remember all the names. So hearing that, I started in our museum also, say, pet club. In the pet club, they used to take home rabbits, they used to take home fish in a jar, also. So when they take and they keep it for 1 month and then they come back. And one day it happened so that I was sitting in my room and there was crying outside by a child, and there was a lot of noise. So I thought, what has happened? So the child came, and my officer, they don't want to give away the jar of the fish. Why? Because a lot of other fishes have been born. He took one fish, and for that, a lot of other fishes born. So the child doesn't want to give it to us. So I said that, yes, you give it to them. There will be a lot of fishes. You will not be able to manage it. So this was given. So pet club was at that time was very, very popular in weekend. One very important activity that the museum started was the mobile science exhibition. In many of these things, in the whole world, India was pioneer. In the mobile science exhibition, which was planned by Dr. Ghosh, and we all joined with him. And we all remember how it was started in a very simple way, making exhibits, putting in a truck, going to school and starting the exhibition. Gradually from there, we started with mobile buses. We have now, I think, 30 or 40 buses all over India. Maybe 30 or 40 buses or more. 50 mobile science exhibition buses, which moves all over India, wherever those buses can go. And a lot of experience by our education officers when they go along with the bus, the type of things, what happens in the schools. You know, the roads in India also is not good. but a tremendous experience that we had. And this is for the population of science. We had exhibits, 28 exhibits in the bus, and the children could go up in the bus and see the exhibition from outside and also from inside. So mobile science exhibition also became a very important activity for population of science. One of the important aspects of our museum also, which is, I don't think anywhere in the world it is there, it was the science demonstration lecture. More than 1,000 science demonstration lectures were made, whereby a small vehicle, a guide lecturer takes some lecture programs, demonstration lecture program on topics from the syllabus. Exhibits made, and on a particular subject, maybe on optics, maybe on atomic energy or sound. So it is taken to a school. Every, say, 10 or 20, 30 kilometers, the vehicle goes from one place to another. Every day in 2 schools, these lectures were given. And the guide lectures, they travel for 21 days and then they come back. So from this was a very popular program in the whole of West Bengal. The mobile science exhibition didn't travel only in Bengal. It traveled to Orissa, the neighboring district of Bihar, Orissa, also it traveled around. So science demonstration lecture, which used to go out. Then also every week or so, we had science demonstration lecture in our auditorium. And when these lectures were being given by our guide lecturers in the auditorium, I used to go. And I loved doing something. And I learned also from my guide lecturers how to demonstrate. That also I learned from them. And then I learned from the museum how to do experiments. And from that experience itself, after retirement, I've taken nearly 300 to 350 such workshops throughout the country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Andaman Nicobar Island. I've taken workshops for the science teachers. How science should be learned by doing with no cost experiments where there is no laboratory. That was my slogan. In that way, I've been taking. Now, all these things I have learned from the working in the science museums. Now, popular lectures. We used to organize popular lectures in our museum. And like as it is done in London, what is that institution that Jagadish was showed in London?
Raj Society?
No, the other one. Faraday also used to give lectures there. So I decided at one time that every Friday we should have lectures. So we had Friday lectures, like as it is done in Royal Institution. So that type of lectures, popular lectures by important scientists of Calcutta, that was organized regularly in our science museum. So different types of programs were done. One more activity that I tell, in I think 1971 or so, the National Council of Science Museum was set up, and then it was decided that the museums will be set up at 3-tier level: National Museum, State Museum, and District Museum. And in the case of District Museum, it was decided by our governing body that it should not be only showing experiments and activity in the museum itself. It should take up socio-economic activity in the district. So our museum in Purulia, the first district science museum in the country, that was in Purulia district in West Bengal. From there, we started working in the villages with a very, very poor community called Kherias. We started working among them. And they didn't know proper agriculture. They used to grow only 1 or 2 types of things. We started training the women to do various kinds, 4 different kinds of artifacts they were making, which are being sold in the market by them, by us, arranged by us. And we are working to nearly 40 villages, giving training to the women, and then bringing their material to the museum and arranging, selling them. So this was a very big work, and reports came up in important newspapers ray of hope for the career in the a very important economic and political weekly. A big report came about this work. So in the Science Museum field, Birla Industrial Museum has done important work in the development. But now the Science Center, regarding Science Center, I would like to say that my visit to yes, I shall finish with this. My visit to America, I saw the Exploratorium in San Francisco. I used to enter there. I was there for 7 days. I used to enter at 7 o'clock in the morning along with the janitor and come back when the museum closed at about 7 p.m. And from there on, we understood what could be the nature of the future science museum. And from that understanding, Dr. Ghosh has started the idea of setting up science centers in India, which will not be a showcase of the industrial objects only, or their models, but also interactive exhibits. That is how the science center movement started here in India, from the experience that we got from there. So these are the type of things that we have done from the Science Museum, and I have learned from it. And even now, just 3 days back, I have taken nearly 10 webinars where I was teaching the science teachers in different parts of India. Even now, I am doing that. So this thing I learned from Science Museum, and I'm enjoying doing this work. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bakshi sir, for giving input and also the working of Birla Industrial and Technological Museum. Now we have with us Shri Ingit Kumar Mukhopadhyay, who was a former DG of NCSM, but let me just give a brief introduction of Mr. Mukhopadhyay.
Make it brief.
Yeah. He is engaged in popularizing science in India since 1978, and after working as curator and director of Central Research and Training Lab, he took over as Director General of National Council of Science Museums in 1997. During his leadership in NCSM, a large network of science centers and museums have been developed in India. Shri Mukhopadhyay has developed numerous exhibits and educational programs for science centers in India and abroad. For his contribution to the field of science communication, he has received the prestigious Roy Sheffer Experience Leadership Award from the Association of Science and Technology Center, Aztec, USA in 2008. He has also served as a member of the International Advisory Board of the Aztec and the Program Committee of the Science Center World Congress. After retirement from the service of NCSM in 2009, Mr. Mukhopadhyay is currently giving consultancy services in the Science Center field and is presently located in Calcutta, India. So my request, sir, to share your experiences.
Well, first of all, I must say that he introduced me as Mukhopadhyay, but I am known as Mukherjee in the field. Well, both of them are the same person. Now, I start by paying my respects to the two stalwarts who are present here in the Science Museum field, Dr. Saroj Ghosh and Mr. Samar Bagchi. I also find some of my friends in the audience. I saw Moshe Rispong. I find Marilyn White, Professor Hines. I do not know whether I should say good morning to Marilyn. Very early morning, I think. Moshe, you remember, you perhaps remember this face. Now, as you already know, I joined the Science Museums in 1978. And with my mechanical engineering background and my experience in different industries, when I joined this place, I did not know much about how science museums work. But then, in 1978, I came in touch with Mr. Amalendu Bose. You have heard that he's the gentleman who started the science museum movement in the country. And that was 1978. No, that is a very important time for the entire Council of Scientific and Industrial Research to another body, which were supposed to be, I would say, formed very soon. In the middle of 70s, there was a task force formed by the Planning Commission of India. And they decided that from then on, the Science Museum should grow and should grow under a special, or you can say an expert organization, which should be autonomous and which may not be under the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. That was 1978. And NCSM was formed in 1978. Very soon, within a year. At that time, Mr. Bagchi was leading the Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, where I joined, working under him. And Dr. Ghosh was in Nehru Science Center in Mumbai. He was setting up the science center there. We met, of course. He used to come to Calcutta and we used to meet quite often. Then what happened is that period, at 78 to 1980, these 2 years, the National Council of Science Museums were put on an experiment. The government of India wanted to see whether the science museums and the upcoming science centers, whether those would work better with the CSIR or with the MCS, the newly formed body. That was the experiment they wanted to do. We are so happy, when in 1980, the government of India decided that no, the delinking is complete. You are out of CSIR. The problem in CSIR was that we are having low priority because their line of functioning was very different from the science communication. We are not getting priority at that moment, financially, otherwise also. We are very happy. We are looking forward to big activities. And at that point in time, Dr. Ghosh took the helm of affairs in the National Council of Science Museums. From 78, 20 years from then, maybe up to 1997, I worked with him. And for 13 years, I worked with Mr. Bagchi. We learned a lot. The first experience was that in that time, during 1980, unfortunately, some people thought that they would like, some staff members actually, they thought that it would be better if they remain in CSIR. And there was some kind of an agitation. And I found how these two stalwarts fought for NCSM. And that was, we learned that when the situation calls for it, you have to be strong. You have to put your point strongly. They succeeded. And that opened the gate, in fact. What happened after that? On the other side, that task force suggested that from the artifact-based museums, which would show mostly industrial and scientific development in India post-independence, it would be better if we create the activity-oriented science centers in which the main thing will be science communication. And they led. Dr. Ghosh actually showed us how to do this. Mr. Bagchi told you that he was in the exploratorium for some time. After he came back, early in the morning, we used to sit with him, discussing things, discussing ideas, discussing new exhibits he has seen. And then we used to do prototyping and finding how we can do it.
Came back with 2 thick notebooks with drawings and designs.
Yes, I remember, yeah. Dr. Ghosh, he taught us to think big. That was one thing which I admire very much. He taught us to think big. And at that time, Dr. Ghosh said that we had to proliferate. We had to go to all corners of the country by setting up science centers of different levels, as Mr. Bagchi explained to you, national level and the regional level and the district level or sub-regional level. So a huge activity you were expecting at that time. Dr. Ghosh traveled quite a lot, and he had one big advantage, that he was a team builder, frankly speaking. As far as I understand him, he's a team builder. He chose the right persons for the right kind of job. And we all spread out, setting up new science centers in districts, small districts, to large cities. And in different capacities, we started making them. But that called for creation of a huge number of, very large number of exhibits in a very short period of time. Because from maybe 1980 to 1985, the NCSM grew with a boom. So many centers came up. If you look at, I don't know, if you look at the history of NCSM, you will find from the 3 centers in 1997 and 1977, you are now 62, I think. 62, from 3 to 62. This is a big thing. And the leader was Dr. Ghosh. He led us. And as I said, he wanted all of us to think big. Then came a time in 1984, in fact, we started thinking about setting up a very large exhibition, a 1,400 square meter exhibition, international exhibition, which would go to other countries and travel. Unfortunately, in India, we don't have much, opportunity to outsource these things. So he said that, okay, we'll conceptualize, we'll make it, we'll pack it, and we will make the logistics also. Let's see. And some of you will go and run the show abroad. So it happened. In 1985, we took a very large exhibit to the US. It traveled to, I think, 6 places then for 2 years. It came back. What happened is we, people working with him at that time, said that, okay, we can do it. And from then on, nothing really became a problem for us. We took large exhibitions to our neighbor Bangladesh, to as far as Caribbean. So in many places, in France, in China, in I think
France,
Russia, many other places.
Bulgaria,
yes. So the confidence that could be built with his guidance, with Dr. Ghosh's guidance, was something that we really enjoyed. And perhaps that, ultimately led to creation of very good exhibits, very good educational programs, as Mr. Bhakti suggested, and very good new things, new ideas. We brought in some non-traditional ideas, like we made panoramas in Kurukshetra, as a part of the science center. Using that panorama, using that story in the epic as a mode for communicating science of that time. So things like that, the new things started coming up. Then because we needed so many new exhibits and so many new experimentation, so much of prototype making, he suggested that we make one central research and training laboratory where new ideas will be made, will be experimented with. Some research will have to, research and development work for making new exhibits, new softwares, new display techniques. All these will be worked out. And also, at the same time, we started thinking about establishing the profession of Science Museum of Science Center profession in the country. And for that, we started a 2-year, 4-semester full-time course on science communication leading to AMS degree here in Calcutta, in this building, next building. Now, I took over from Dr. Ghosh in 1997. I think very soon after that, both of us were traveling to USA for, I think, for attending a ASPC conference. I don't remember, possibly in St. Louis, Missouri. One of our friends, many of you know, Moshe knows, I'm sure, Marilyn also knows, David Ellis from the Boston Science Museum. He told me, Ingrid, you are putting your feet in very large shoes. The whole community, Science Center community, will look at you. We want to see how you fit in. Well, whatever I did in the period when I was the DG, and some of that my friend told me that what I could do. Well, those are all because of the inspiration, the guidance, and the mentorship that I got from these people, particularly Dr. Ghosh. And the day I entered, I felt that the shoes, those shoes which David Ellis said, are still too big for me. Thank you for whatever you did to me.
Thank you, sir, for such a valuable and insight into the stories, which probably we come to know. We have with us actually Dr. S.S. Biswas. Unfortunately, he is not present, but he has sent a message. Dr. S.S. Biswas, the former Director General of National Museum, New Delhi, is a very close associate of Dr. Saroj Ghosh. And he was the chairman of Indian National Committee for the International Council of Museum, ICOM, for 6 years. For his active participation for the cause of development of Indian museums, and also his activities in the ICOM field. He was elected the chairman of ICOM Asia Pacific Organization ASPAC. Dr. Biswas is currently the president of ICOMOS India and the vice president of the advisory committee of ICOMOS Paris, and also the chairman of the Indian Association of Friends of Monuments and Museums in India. He has sent his reminiscences, and I would like to read his reminiscences. Quotes. Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan Dr. Saroj Ghosh, former Director General of NCSM, whom I know for about 50 years in multi-affairs, in service, as well as a person whose wisdom is indeed an example of a successful personality. In museum services, he is a doyen, a far-sighted organizer, and a pathfinder for the future museum professionals. NCSM with multi-museums centers are now dotted all over the country, having a band of quality professionals. It is certainly his vision and creation. Science City in Calcutta, the only of its kind in the country, is his brainchild, a combination of science and arts presentation enjoyed by all and one. I personally came in touch with him when I was a superintending archaeologist of Museums branch of Archaeological Survey of India, situated within the campus of the Indian Museum. He was then associated with BITM Kolkata, the only science museum then in India. Science museum centers have now grown into multiple centers dotted all over the country. This is due to his wide vision and intellectual approach. In international field of museum activities, also, Dr. Ghosh is the first Indian who became the president of ICOM, having its headquarters in Paris. His contributions in world scenario are manifold, and Calcutta, nay India, became a multiple museum activities. ICOM journal was published from Calcutta with various information and curatorial guidance. He was also instrumental in bringing the headquarters of ICOM Asia Pacific Organization to Calcutta, and me, under his patronage, was elected as the president of ICOM Asia Pacific Organization. I feel happy to remember those days of our joint ventures on many successful projects. His contribution as editor of ICOM journal as an academic, informative, and presentable. I feel great satisfaction being always associated with in multiple endeavors and successes. Today, the 1st September 2021, he became 86 years. I sincerely wish a happy birthday to him. I also wish him best of years, past and future ahead. Recently, while talking over phone, Dr. Ghosh said, quote, "We are sailing in the same boat, brother." It's true indeed our personal life also. My best wishes again for his 86th birthday. and pray many, many returns of the day. Dr. Bishwas. Now we have another speaker, Dr. Moshe Rishpan, who is joining from Tel Aviv in Israel, a pioneer of extracurricular science education at the Weizmann Institute of Science. Yeah. Dr. Moshe Rishpan is the founder of the Clore Garden of Science,
I met him 2 years
Science Festival, and numerous other programs and initiatives
in Israel.
that today annually provide thousands of youngsters as well as adults with the opportunity to take part in summer workshops, mathematics Olympiads, and a host of additional science-related activities. He is PhD in nuclear physics from the Weizmann Institute of Science, and while conducting his doctoral studies, he became involved in establishing extracurricular science education as a part of activities of Weizmann Institute. He has numerous awards and honors for his educational activities. It's a long list of awards. And incidentally, he's also received the Roy Sheffer Leading Edge Award from Aztec for the Vista experience in 2007. Since retiring in 2009, Dr. Rishpan serves as a consultant to the Clore Garden of Science, today part of Davidson Institute of Science Education, which leads, coordinates, and operates the educational activities of the Weizmann Institute of Science. May I request Dr. Moshe Rishpan to, please.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to tell about my friendship with Saroj Ghosh, Dr. Ghosh. It began sometimes in the late 70s or early 80s when I attended a UNESCO conference in Paris, or UNESCO workshop in Paris. I was sitting in the audience. Near me was a person that I never met before, and we started to discuss as the workshop perhaps was not so interesting. So we found out many fields of interest, common interests among us, and so we did this. And also nowadays, I understand that also our age is about the same. So this was a beginning of a wonderful friendship of many years. And also a friendship with many people, other people in India that I will not mention the names, but there are, some of them are here and participating in that meeting. And we met, Saroj and I met many times in India, many times all over the world in science, mostly in Aztec conferences. I sometimes I was giving demonstrations in physics, and Saroj was one of the volunteers there on that. And even if he didn't like so much to do volunteer, but he had to do that with me. Saroj, perhaps you remember. And so the meetings in okay, you see here a picture. I'd like to show it a little later when I speak about that. Ganga, yeah, okay, thank you. As a matter of fact, many of them visits in India were for workshops. In the beginning, that were together with Shab Levy, and we were in Calcutta. We were working in these workshops about developing new exhibits for science museums, and I liked very much the idea of what they do in India about the outdoor science exhibits. So I learned a lot about that. Sorry. one workshop was, I remember so well. This is it was in 19, even I remember the year now. It was 1988. Science Without Walls. This was, I regard it as a world record. As I'll tell you in a few in some details, and you understand why. And nobody is dreaming to compete in such and to do something like that again. The workshop was in 4 different cities, starting in New Delhi, and after 2 days going to Mumbai, after 2 days to Bangalore, and another 2 days to Calcutta. And in the beginning, I was a little worried what will happen with the logistics of that. And we didn't have to. As every morning, sorry, every morning we have to put our luggage in the lobby, and the other day, and in the evening we were flying, and we came to another city, another hotel, in another room, finding everybody found his suitcase. We didn't lose any moment, and we didn't lose any suitcase in that. And this, I'm sure nobody can do something like that. Only Saroj and his able staff. When we decided to have a garden of science, to develop a garden of science at the Weizmann Institute, there were two places to study, to learn how to do it. One was the exploratorium, the other one even more than the exploratorium, because in India they already developed outdoor exhibits. So I told Saroj that we need some help. He said, okay, come to visit, and you visit again. There's many places, many science museums, like in that workshop that I described before. So I went with my technician of the Weizmann Institute, and we saw some of the best museums as I ever saw, and purchased for both some exhibits. So we had a critical mass for opening the Garden of Science, and we used all the exhibits, and we used more than that. And Ganga, you may show that what you showed before, the picture.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We are showing.
We used everything, even the box, the boards of the box. And you see, yesterday I visited the machine shop at the Garden of Science, and I took the picture of that. It was on the big box where they shipped the container that they shipped the exhibits to Israel. This was written the government of India, and we have it. People coming there, they remember that every time they come to our workshop. One visit to Calcutta. Saroj took me to the outskirts of Calcutta, showing me something like a huge, gigantic dump. It was stinky. It was terrible. And he, like a prophet, said, "You see, next time you come here, you will see a city, a science city." And a prophet, either you believe in him or not. I didn't have to believe, because I was sure that Saroj Ghosh is the person also who can make prophecies come true. And this is what happened when I came the second time. And now I think another challenge for Saroj is to have another one. It's like not a science city, but a science state. Next time, Saroj. And I will tell you a little bit about one visit about Saroj in Israel. He visited several times, but one was interesting in one aspect that I was not then in good terms with the chairman of ICOM in Israel, but he called me and told me that, Dr. Ghosh is visiting Israel, and the Israeli ICOM, we sent him the schedule for a visit in Israel, and Saroj, when he saw the schedule, he refused. He said he will not come to Israel unless the Garden of Science is included in his schedule. So the person who said, we didn't have a choice. He will come to visit you. And Saroj came to visit me. And what I can do is now to thank Saroj again, and also, of course, to wish Saroj a happy birthday. Thank you, Saroj. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Moshe. Such an interesting talk and interesting stories about Dr. Ghosh. We have with us Marlene Hoyt, the former president and CEO of New York Hall of Science. Marlene Hoyt is an active writer and trainer, a member of the National Faculty of the Ecology Society of America's SBI Institute. She also chairs the Audit Committee of New Knowledge and is a member of the board of Association of the Fundraising Professionals, New York, as well as its Professional Advancement Committee. Marlene worked as a cultural grant maker in the 70s and 80s, as a fundraising consultant with J.C. Grieber in the 90s, and was a 20-year founding staff member of the New York Hall of Science, serving as head of advancement, chief operating officer, president, and CEO. He has recently written, I think, several blogs on coronavirus, I think, and we are all blessed with his writings on COVID pandemic. So, Ms. Marlene Hoyt, yeah.
Thank you very much. I have been so looking forward to seeing all of you and celebrating Dr. Ghosh's leadership and his birthday, and also, as we're seeing unfold this morning, celebrating our field and its growth over the last 40 years. I did, as Sri Kumar mentioned, have the honor of being a founding member of the New York Hall of Science and executive staff. And that founding and all those years were informed by the work of Dr. Ghosh and colleagues in science centers across India. As we celebrate Dr. Ghosh and his work establishing and expanding informal learning and science centers in India, I'd like to especially note the power of collaboration he leveraged to generate genuine synergy. Synergy, now there's a word, regarding combining resources from more than one organization to create something larger than either of them had before. And it is thrown around a lot and rarely happens. When Alan Friedman met colleagues and observed Indian Science Center programs in 1988, as Moshe just described.
Muted, no sound.
You are muted, yeah.
I am so sorry. Let me just skip all my glorious golden words from the beginning and tell you how happy I am to see colleagues who I know, many who I'm meeting just today, and to celebrate Dr. Ghosh's birthday and his leadership over all of these years. I am going to talk briefly about the role of NCSM and Dr. Ghosh in the founding of the New York Hall of Science. And I'm going to reference a word which is often used but seldom actually fulfilled, the word synergy, which is the combining of resources from more than one organization to create something larger than either of them can produce alone. When the founding director, Dr. Alan Friedman, met colleagues in 1988, as Moshe described earlier, he was just in the midst of the earliest stages of creating the New York Hall of Science, New York's first science center. He was just learning about the facility itself, which had been a space theme exhibition facility from the 1964 World's Fair. And I believe we have a photo of that if you can put it up. And he had just accepted the task of creating the Science Center itself in this abandoned facility. At the same time, he was also learning about metropolitan New York. And the facility was located in Queens, the most diverse region in the United States, a home of more than 50 foreign language newspapers and magazines. And he was learning that the Queens location was at the epicenter of families living amongst the millions of people in the New York metropolitan area. Alan was deeply experienced with the Exploratorium, the Lawrence Hall of Science, and La Villette in Paris. All of these centers housed hands-on exhibitions at the facilities and provided outreach education programs. Although decades of evaluation have underscored how effective this approach was, Alan was seeking a way to expand the hall's reach beyond its walls to non-traditional museum audiences, to the nation's largest school districts with its incredible deficit in equipment and trained teachers, and to people whose first language was not English. During the 1988 U.S. Subcommission field observations, Alan observed hands-on science exhibits traveling on a trailer and in buses. India's science centers had built these traveling exhibits to deal with the visitors who had never visited a museum, might not be literate, and whose first language was not English or Hindi. Their exhibits explained themselves as visitors manipulated them. Even as India had developed these groundbreaking traveling exhibit models, like the US, there was a hunger to identify more effective, viable science teaching methods. Dr. Friedman brought a portable Star Lab inflatable planetarium, as you just saw in the image that was placed for all of us. High quality Star Lab discs allowed for the teaching, the projection of constellations, seasons, and sky culture. The planetarium itself was truly portable, durable, and could accommodate a classroom of children and teachers or groups of family members. By the late 80s, Star Lab portable planetariums were being produced in India, and licenses had been agreed for the purchase and production of high-quality Star Lab projectors. At the same time in the United States, Star Labs were part of the opening outreach education program of the New York Hall of Science to New York City. And in following years, a modeling of Star Lab nationally. Tens of thousands of students, teachers, and families benefited. At the same time, Alan's observations in India informed all of the planning and exhibition development of the New York Hall of Science. Each exhibit module was required to explain itself without access to the label within 90 seconds of first manipulation. Every exhibit went through prototype testing, as Dr. Mukherjee was mentioning earlier, to communicate effectively. And when those modules did not, regardless of how dedicated our staff might be to them, they were discarded, and the construction advanced with those that were most effective. Likewise, exhibition themes were revised and focused to effectively respond to visitor interests and experience. The New York Hall of Science had opened in 1986, and Ellen saw your traveling science, outdoor science exhibits in 1988. By 1997, funds had been raised to build and open the science playground at the New York Hall of Science. And we have an image of the science playground here also. The Indian Consul General based in New York cut the ribbon and addressed the gathered dignitaries as we opened the science playground, clearly making the connection to the source of our concept. At the time that our science playground opened, it was the largest in the New World. So as Indian science centers had demonstrated, families who'd never visited the New York Hall of Science joined experienced visitors to enjoy and learn in this outdoor exhibition. And if you can find the third image that I sent, let's put it up now.
Yeah.
There is tremendous value in convening colleagues to share their work and discuss their challenges as we are doing today. Every year, all of us take part in conferences large and small to capture this value. If you can move ahead to the second slide, we'll see the science playground. There we go. Thank you. However, the ultimate value occurs when synergy emerges, when models shared are actually replicated and not just thought about or celebrated, and emerge and expand in new places. Extraordinary leadership is required to produce this ultimate value, the replication of models. And Dr. Saroj Ghosh provided this leadership to India and to the world over and over through the decades. So greetings through me from your colleagues in the United States to all of us gathered here today. Our added thanks to you, Dr. Ghosh, and my thanks to the organizers of this conference today, especially Ganga Rautala, who helped me prepare to join you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn, for this very interesting talk and sharing your experiences. We have now with us Mr. P.K. Bhaumik.
We have to contact him through phone or phone because he's not connected.
He's not connected. Yeah, he's connected. Mr. Bhaumik, are you there in the?
No, he's not connected.
He's not connected. Okay.
Phone.
You will call him or then, or we'll take Mr. Ganguly is there.
Take Ganguly sir and Achha.
We are trying to connect Mr. Bhaumik, but in the meantime, we have with us Dr. Tapan Kumar Ganguly, the former director of Science City Calcutta and former Deputy Director General NCSM. Whether we can bring on a screen? Yeah, Mr. Ganguly. Dr. Ganguly is there. Huh? He's there. He's there. Dr. Ganguly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you are muted, sir. Can you just unmute it?
এখান থেকে করে দিন গৌতম
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Just a few words, sir, about you. So for all the audience which are present here, Dr. Ganguly joined Birla Industrial and Technological Museum in 1976 as a curator, and after long 12 years shifted to NCSM headquarters at Salt Lake and served as director headquarters from 1991 till he moved to Science City, Kolkata as director in 1998. He was closely associated with Dr. Ghosh in taking up various challenges at headquarters and also science population activities in the country. He was involved in planning and development of several galleries, exhibitions, and new science centers in different parts of the country. He finally superannuated as Deputy Director General of NCSM in the year 2007. Dr. Ganguly, please.
To begin with, I shall give my hearty, thanks and for the leadership I received from Dr. Ghosh. I joined in 1976 when Dr. Ghosh was the head of Birla Museum. Although I reported to Mr. Bakshi because at that time Dr. Ghosh was mostly spending his time in Bombay. In 1980, I suppose, I was shifted to NCSM headquarters, which was within the Birla Museum campus at that time, and worked under Dr. Ghosh all along till his retirement. I worked in different capacities and in different places of India, like Purulia, Tirunelveli, Dharampur, Guwahati. Mostly in those places, I had to work with Dr. Ghosh and got his guidance at every time. I was also involved in the science city, science city development, and I've seen very closely how Dr. Ghosh had planned the science city and how it was developed and how it was run. Although I ran it for a few years after Dr. Ghosh's retirement, and I knew how to run a science center only after his retirement, because before that, all the time, I was working under him for planning and development of new science centers, and also selection of sites, and all constantly keeping in touch with him. I was involved with him in preparing the master plan for district science centers. In different capacities, I was associated with him in different places, as I said. He was a master of, and he was a great thinker of science exhibits at that time, as I remember. At one time, sometimes in 1983-84, suddenly a decision was made at the government level to inaugurate Dharampur Science Center, the district science center of Dharampur, and we had very little time in our hand to decide the exhibits and everything. So after that decision, one day we were flying back from Bombay to Calcutta, and within that 2 hour or 2 and a quarter, 2 hour 15 minutes flight, he actually planned the entire, vast gallery of that center. He decided what will be the different sections and how the exhibits will be there, and it ultimately when the plane was about to land, he told me that here it is. You now take it up with Mukherjee and arrange development of exhibits and feed him with all the information. So that is how he used to work. During that tenure, from 1982, I would say, to 1997, those 15 years, he had a team of, few curators, later directors, like Mr. Mukherjee, myself, and later Mr. Kusami joined at that time, I believe. Yes. So all of us were working under him all the time. What else I have to say? And I've seen how everything is to be developed in a science center, how everything is run in a science center. I've also seen a very different aspect of his, intellect. We used to travel up to the museum, to our office while it was in BITM many a times, because we were living very close by, and he used to pick me up from the bus station many days. During those times, I came to know how much, he was conversant, how much knowledge he had in his vernacular, that is Bengali. He secured the highest marks in Bengali in his school final examination. In those days, it was very difficult getting high marks in vernacular. I still miss him whenever I get stuck with some words, with some thoughts or something. I miss you, Dr. Ghosh, many times in my life while I get stuck in taking decisions. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining and giving some insight into and sharing your experiences working with Dr. Ghosh. We have with us Sri Shamaresh Goswami.
He's also not connected.
He was there.
No, but he is not able to speak.
I could see.
No, he got connected, then he got disconnected.
I could see it.
I saw him.
Dr. Goswami, are you there connected?
Goswami Sahib needs to be unmuted.
Yes, we are.
Yes, he's there. Oh, that's it.
You
Mr.
should.
Goswami, Mr. Goswami, can you just unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'll just give a few words about Mr. Goswami. Yeah, you can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mr. Goswami joined the NCSM and Birla Museum, and also he served as director of Birla Museum till he laid his office in March 2004. He is recipient of Gyan Chandra Ghosh Memorial Award for Popularization of Science and Technology in Society. He was elected as Fellow of Institution of Engineers. He has a patent on computer titled Novel Technique of Coding and Decoding, popularly known as touch screen, way back during 1996. His TV and radio programs generated ample popularity among students and public. He has contributed in development of many science centers under NCSM, has developed virtual laboratory around 1998, and also published a book titled Hands-on Experience. He has worked as Associate Professor of Bengal Institute of Technology after retirement. Shri Goswami, sir. Yeah.
Now, first of all, let me wish Dr. Ghosh a happy birthday and wish a long life for you. Now, before proceeding, I would like to remember Sri Amarendra Ghosh, who is no more with us, because I happened to meet him and work with him in a different platform. But he is a very exemplary person, and I have learned a lot of things from him. But unfortunately, when I joined NCSM in her BITM in 1981. That before that he retired, but I have met him. I had occasions to meet him at least more than half a dozen times and discuss with him on many other matters in Visvesvaraya Museum at Bangalore. Anyway, coming back to the topic here, I have learned a lot of things from Dr. Ghosh. And I salute him because according to me, he is a true leader. A leader, the qualities what a leader should have, he has all the qualities. According to my assessment. Now, I will talk in a different wavelength from other speakers. I'll go into some micro details about my reminiscence with him. Now, as it has already been told, I joined in 81. After joining, I joined with Mr. Shamar Bakshi, whom also I have got great regards. I worked with him for more than a dozen of years. Now, I'll tell a small instance which actually motivated me to work in this particular organization, because I came, like Mr. Mukherjee, I came from an entirely different field, because I had no idea about science museums. So I was in R&D in Indian telephone industries. But after joining, I was thinking, I was going around the electricity gallery then. Of course, it has been renovated later on. But at that time, in 81, whatever the electricity gallery was, I was going through the exhibits and trying to understand what he tries to say. That is a self-learning process. And due to my curiosity, because I'm basically electronics engineer, of course, at that time, in our time, there was no electronics degree. So I was awarded an electrical engineering degree. So, but I had, due to my curiosity, I went behind the exhibit and saw what is there, how these animations are taking place. Then I discovered that it was all used by relays. So they used to be called relays, and they are, according to my assessment, generally accepted fact, relays are not reliable items for working more than 1 million operations. So I was thinking, that was my first day. Second day, I was thinking how I can contribute in this field. So I thought of changing one of the exhibit into into electronics, the discipline in which I have some idea of working hands-on in ITI Bangalore. So that is about on third day, in fact. And by the way, I'd like to say that the Calcutta, the electronics market was not very well known to me primarily because after my schooling, I left. I studied in Bombay, and that time Bombay, and now Mumbai, but later on worked for 13 years in Bangalore. So I didn't know much about the Calcutta market. But anyhow, I took a minibus. I still remember distinctly, opposite to our gate, and went to Chandni Chowk, and from there I searched for components and procured components and brought to the museum. And then next day onwards, I started winding up the circuitry. It was designed already. So I worked on the circuitry. It took a couple of times, and I burned a couple of my fingers also in the process. So, but about 10 days from my joining, this incident happened, which impressed me about Dr. Ghosh. So I was working on my workbench, and suddenly phone rang up, telephone, and I stood up to receive it and saw Dr. Ghosh is standing behind me. I was surprised. So anyway, he said, "You will pick up the phone and talk." Then after that, he told me, "What are you doing?" I told, "Sir, I am wearing this." That used to be called Vero board. The people of my discipline understand what is a Vero board. Now, Vero board in which we can put electronic circuits. So I'm soldering them, and he said, "How it will be useful?" Then I took him to the gallery and told him, "Sir, this exhibit, I will replace it by this one. And this has a very longer life and no maintenance, etc., etc." He appreciated. See, I don't know how much knowledge he had about integrated circuits, honestly, but he appreciated the logic which I told him. He said, "Okay, how many days it will take?" I told him, "If I do it alone, it will take about 1.5 months, 1.5 to 2 months." He said, "Why, you don't have any assistant?" I said, "No, sir." So anyway, he went. Then within 7 days, I got a technician on daily basis, and with his help, we completed the work and installed it in about 2 weeks' time. And then I informed Dr. Ghosh, and he immediately left all his work, and he came with me and saw that it is working exactly the same way as it was working earlier. And he patted me on the back and said, "Carry on. This is how it should be done. You try to change as many things as possible, as many exhibits as possible, and make it even better if possible." So that is how my journey started in BITM, and I started with that particular technician. I worked for about 1.5 to 2 months, and later on I was given another technician, and in this team of 3 of us, including those 2 technicians, did change something. Now, after some time, it came to my mind that it was during 83, I remember, that it is high time that computers should be utilized in our museum for exhibit purpose. But to do that, I have to first educate the students who will be capable of later on handling it. Now, around the similar time, if you remember, Rajiv Gandhi was distributing BBC microcomputers to all the schools, and from many schools I happened to visit them, and the teacher were telling that we do not know this equipment is lying idle. We do not know how to use it. So it came to my mind that then I should have organized a training program for them for using how to use a computer. And I took an appointment with Dr. Ghosh and met him. And he told me, how do you think it will be helpful? So I explained him for about half an hour how it can help. The computer in exhibits, in making exhibits, in making means in developing exhibits, how computer can assist, and many other things it can do. So in order to do that, number 2 things we need our staff to be trained in that particular software of that logic, in fact that logic. And I would like to venture into another program. I told him that training schools, high school students in this, those days it was a basic language, BASIC, basic language. So in that language, I would like to organize a training program for about 15 days during the holidays. So next summer holiday, I wrote to 9 schools, and I still remember each school sent one participant. So I had 9 participants, and I took that training program in the then conference room of BITM. And after the program was finished, I don't know how many of you will believe, the students who took that program, they almost touched my feet and then said, prolong it for another 5 days. Our vacation is still there. So it was prolonged, and then they went back. Then I received appreciation letter from all the schools heads that such programs should be conducted. I don't know whether Dr. Ghosh will remember. I had shown it to him. He said, fine, it's excellent. You put it up in the next executive committee meeting. It was put up. Then a decision was taken that computer program should be started not only as a regular program, not only at BITM, but all national centers in India. So that was the journey of computers in from 83 onwards in NCSM. Later on, I had occasions to visit abroad, and I saw there during perhaps late 80s touchscreen computer. In most, as far as I remember, in Lawrence Hall of Science or somewhere. So it impressed me a lot. You could touch the screen, and nowadays what you do in our, what we get in our Android mobiles. So similar things, not so sophisticated for us. So they used to use in those days 2 layers, and that senses the touch. But on my way back, I was thinking, with me, I think some other curators went, accompanied me in the same visit. But anyhow, I went on thinking, and then the thing which they said, novel coding decoding system, I made that, nowadays what you call touch screen, I made that. So the first exhibit was installed in the Atom Gallery Mr. Bakshi will remember, Dr. Ghosh will remember, Mr. Mukherjee might remember that in the that gallery, periodic table, that particular thing was used. So if you touch any one of the items, halogens or any other group or anything, so in the menu, the program goes there and you can see what is its uses, what structure, etc. So that is how the computer journey took place. This is one aspect of my memory that I can remember. Another thing is, in my subsequent visit abroad, I found the robots were being used there. Robotic arms to do various exhibits. They perform various exhibits. So on my return, that idea was working in my mind, but those days robots are to be imported, robotic arms are to be imported. And so I approached him. I approached Dr. Ghosh. I don't still remember exactly how much, but it was costing in Indian currency around 80,000 rupees on those days. I selected a particular robotic arm. So same question you asked me, how is it for your playing? I'm quoting him within quotes, verbatim. No, sir, it is not for my playing, not for my pleasure. It is for exhibits. He said, exhibits? Yes, I said, how many months it will take from the day it launches in VITM? I told the 6 months time you can give me. I have to learn about it, and we have to devise an exhibit. By that time, the electronics laboratory was developed totally. I had 3 curators and 7 technicians, and the entire team was developed by that time.
We have, sir, that's a shortage of time, sir, so because we have some 4 5 speakers.
I'll the last one.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Can I take 1 minute?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that first exhibit was made within 4 months' time. That was, I can write your name. There were blocks in front of you. If you feed your name into the computer, then the robotic arm will go and pick up the corresponding block. It may be on the back side of the block, where it will turn it, keep it back, and then it will remember from which coordinate it has picked up the block. It will put back the same way. So that was made, and then Khagan Babu modified version 2 was also made, and like that robotics, a small way, robotic laboratory was started, and last one I want to mention here is the virtual lab which you have mentioned. That detail I will not go. It also helped the schools in a long way, and now of course that online teaching part of it is being utilized. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you all my colleagues. Thank Mr. Bakshi. Thank you very much, and wish all of you a happy and long life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Bhomik. Could we contact Mr. Bhomik?
We'll do it last. Yeah. Now we have with us Sri G.S. Rautela, the former DG of NCSM. Sri Rautela actually joined National Council of Science Museums in 1979 and later worked for various science centers across the country. He was the project coordinator of Hall of Science, Technology and Energy host in New Delhi, Regional Science Center Bhopal. He was director of Nehru Science Center and later on shifted as director of Science City, Calcutta. Finally, he became Director General of National Council of Science Museums in 2009. Until his superannuation, he was there as DG in 2016. He has contributed a lot to the development of science centers and museums, hands-on and minds-on science exhibits and exhibitions. Presently, he is working as advisor to the Uttarakhand Council of Science and Technology, Government of Uttarakhand, and helping them to set up a science city in Dehradun. He has largely devoted his time in improving the quality of science education in our schools and colleges. So, Mr. Rautela, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. Distinguished scientists who are participating from various parts of the country, educationists, science communicators, and science center professionals. My greetings from Himalayas. So I'm sitting in Dehradun today. First of all, I would like to wish Dr. Ghosh a happy 87th birthday and pray that he be blessed with good health and eventful life to come in future. The idea of this particular meet, I don't call it as only to celebrate Dr. Ghosh's birthday, but also science professionals to come together to share various perspectives of what they saw in their life and as a science museum professional. So I also would like to strictly thank the participant from abroad who gladly agreed to my request about 10 days back. Madeline Hoyt, Martin Hinch, Moshe Rishpan, and we have some more coming in the next sessions. We have come together to celebrate these 50 years of dedicated service to science communication and science museum and science center development by Dr. Ghosh. I have been a co-traveler with him for almost 18 years in the professional journey, which he always led. I consider him as my mentor, teacher, and philosopher and guide, and remains even today. To me, he was a leader, meticulous planner, strict disciplinarian, and honest professional. For NCSM, a right man with right aptitude and interest at the right place. So otherwise, a person of his caliber, which I always saw a brilliance in him, would have got much more lucrative jobs elsewhere in the world. His contributions, which I recall, especially which are considered a turning point in NCSM, the working exhibits, the mobile science exhibitions, the interactive science centers, and the science city, and later the science storytelling museums, and international collaboration. And also professional development of science center staff and setting the CRTL in 1987. He believed that if you want to build an organization, you need a strong foundation, and its people and its employees must be trained and exposed to what's new in the world. He always identified right people and nurtured them and put them in right places so that they could deliver. His philosophy of science centers: keep public at the center of planning, make it fun and enjoyable, engage visitors, and share the story of science with the public. That has always been guiding us. He always thought one step ahead. One of the incidents I remember in 1994, he came straight from Delhi to Bombay after a meeting in the ministry, where he probably got no for an announced budget for NCSM. So he was worried for the expansion of NCSM and its furtherance. So he warned all of us in a meeting in Bombay that time is not far, that when we have to earn our salaries. So this gave birth to a new concept called the Science City. And Science City Calcutta is an example in the world, which I could say, which has remained self-sustaining for last 24 years. Even after retirement, he single-handedly created great museums. That is one in Parliament Museum, the Rashtrapati Museum, Bhavan Museum, and Science City Gandhinagar. And he also provided professional guidance to the Pushpa Gujarat Science City in Jalandhar. Some small incidences when I joined BITM in 1979. Actually, there was a strike in BITM. And just before the strike, I was identified for the Delhi Science Center, which had just been thought about in Pragati Maidan. But the strike spoiled everything, and I was asked to go to Bombay. I know the mission in the night, how we were put in Mr. Chandra's house. Mr. Chandra was an exhibition officer. And because we were living inside the Birla Museum and we were threatened by those striking employees. So in the night, we were shifted to Mr. Chandra's house and we were told to move to different places. He gave money to all of us. And I went to Bombay and others somebody went to Bangalore and other places. So 13 of us were spread around the country for new science centers. That was the first batch or the largest batch of curators under training in Calcutta. When I went to Bombay, the science center was under development. There was already a small gallery called Light and Sight in a shed, and second part of the shed was a workshop and our sitting places. Dr. Ghosh would always spend a lot of time in developing the science museum there, would come sometime with his family. I remember his young daughter, Shayata, I think they call him Misty, used to run to the workshop. And we were always afraid that she will get hurt because there were machines. She was so small. And then Dr. Ghosh would come from inside, hold her hand, again, lock her up in the small room. I call it dormitory. You know, a director would live in those simplicity in that small room. I never imagined. I see a lot of directors around today, how luxurious life they want to live. And Sayata loved animals. I remember that love of animals gave birth to small animal corner in the science park in Bombay. We had a rabbit enclave, we had guinea pigs, we had even deer once upon a time. That time I was doing my research in science education. So I recall Jean Piaget. Mr. Bakshi would understand it very much. Most of the work of Jean Piaget was on his grandchildren. And finally, he propagated a theory of growth of logical thinking from childhood to adolescence. So I thought that is how Sayata's love for small animals gave birth to Children's Science Park in Bombay, Animal Corner. That's very interesting. And Dr. Ghosh was a very strict person. Sometimes a lot of my colleagues say that he's very tough and strict, but that was not so. I had traveled with him sometime abroad, participating in ASCC conferences or other conferences or ICOM conferences. He was so jovial. I recall how jovial he was. I remember one of the small incidents in Delhi. Once we were traveling from airport to the science center, his small daughter was in the car. And when we were passing through the zoo, she said, Papa, look, this is the zoo. You know, the joke Dr. Ghosh made, Misty, you identify your place very quickly. So that's, very interesting anecdote. And he was so committed to his daughter, to his family, daughter. I recall in one of the conferences in Canada or Toronto, in the night at 12 o'clock, he was reading Shakespeare's book. So we asked him, why this is very late, you should sleep. He said, no, after going back to India, I have to teach my daughter English. So look at the commitment, even that hard work that we were doing, but he never left his commitment to the family. Science parks became I would say the first science park in Bombay, 1979, became an inspiration even to United States, which Marilyn just now mentioned about the New York Hall of Science. But prior to New York Hall of Science, a science park was opened in St. Louis, and a magazine called Span published an article with the title An Indian Inspiration. And when you read that article of 1987, Span talks about how that science park development was influenced by Indian experience when these people came to India for a workshop and saw science parks in India. And not 87, I think it was 1992. And that's got them influenced. Dr. Ghosh has a great quality. He created his own space in scientific, administrative, professional, and bureaucratic, and even political fraternity, but efficiently networking with the stakeholders in administration, scientific community, bureaucracy, political leadership, and national and international professional community. That this is the buzzword today. Networking is necessary if you want to succeed. And I think that's what we learned from Dr. Ghosh. And he was the first Asian to become the president of ICOM. And even today, there is no president of ICOM from Asia other than Dr. Ghosh. I'm still connected to ICOM. Thanks to Dr. Ghosh for introducing me in 1986 to the professional world of ICOM and the professional connections that I made with ICOM colleagues around the globe. And even today, I'm a member of ICOM's committee in Paris, where I contribute a little bit of my learning, what I did in science museums. And Dr. Ghosh was quite courageous. If I look at two incidences, one of 1979 BITM strike, what happened that time? We had to deal with it. So Dr. Ghosh dealt it. Even a lockout in a government organization, never thought about. You can't think of a lockout in the government department. So that BITM was locked down. So he dealt the whole movement with a very strong hand, and finally we won. And those miscreants or bad elements went out of NCSM. The second incident was in 1998 in Bombay, when the political party influence small group started disturbing. So that also we dealt very strongly. Even we had life-threatening threats from those political groups, but we stood very firm and won over that. And during my induction training, I'll take 2 minutes, Mr. Kumar. During my induction training in Calcutta in 1979, his lectures were very motivating and that made me to remain in Science Museum for 37.5 years. Even though I had some offers during my career in NCSM, I remained, including an offer from Pacific Science Center. So, Dr. Ghosh, I would always cherish your mentorship and your guidance. And you advised me when I retired in 2016 that never sit idle. That guides me even today. I'm working in the professional world of science centers, and I enjoying that. So I salute you for completing 86 glorious years and contributing to this field of science centers tremendously. And I wish you good health, and also wish the organizers all the best for the remaining part of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving this valuable information. We have with us Mr. Manikar, again a former Director General of National Council of Science Museum, who also incidentally joined along with Mr. Rautela in 1979 and worked in various science centers and museums across the country in various capacities, including directorship of 2 centers, national level centers at Delhi and Mumbai. He also served as Deputy Director General of NCSM during 2013 and took over as Director General of the National Council of Science Museums in 2017, and later he superintended in 2018 as DG of NCSM. So may I request Mr. Manikar to say a few words on this? Yeah. We have some. Yeah.
Thank you, Kumar. And also at the outset, I would like to wish very happy birthday to Dr. Ghosh, my guru, my mentor, because of whom I started my career in 1979 in NCSM, and I was just a fresher. And I stayed in the council till 1970 and till 2018. I think such a long staying in an organization is only because of the work that was given to us, guided to us, or inspired us in various fields. And Dr. Ghosh was the leader. And I still consider him as a leader because even in this today's world, he is still considered as the walking and talking university in the field of museums, not only the science museums, but the entire museums. I'm really so admiring him for his leadership, for his qualities. All my predecessors have spoken so well so far, and his qualities have been described. But I will say that he was an iron man, a man with an iron hand, but with the soft heart. I have personally experienced a lot of such things with him. In fact, when I joined in 1979 in the council, I didn't know what exactly the science center is. Even though I was so young and so new to this field, he straightway put me as the member secretary of the Internal Development Committee. I really didn't know what exactly that means. But then he held my hand and he kept on showing me what are the responsibilities of a member secretary of the Internal Development Committee. And that was the time when we were working for the first children's science park of the country. In fact, he also told me the story of that, why exactly this children's science park came up in Mumbai. The Mumbai was a difficult place in terms of land. Initially, a lot of time was wasted in procuring the land for the science center. But somehow later on when it was available and then when CSIR was not able to develop the full-fledged science center there, the one single gallery in a stopgap arrangement in an asbestos shed was set up as a right-hand side gallery. And then the work for the real science center started, which was involving sufficient time, at least 3 to 4 years of time would have been required for setting up a new science center because the building construction, architects, and so many paraphernalias. So he said, till these 3 or 4 years, we cannot simply sit at it. We need to prove ourselves to the city. We need to tell the local citizens that we have something for you and create that kind of an atmosphere so that by the time the building would be ready, we would be ready with the people's support. And it really worked. I have learned many things from him. I remember those days when we used to organize eclipse observation programs in the daytime, solar eclipse observations. And he used to encourage, he used to support us from all angles. He used to say, go ahead. He never used to say no. In fact, he used to even appreciate our work in various exhibits, designing or repairing work. We very enthusiastically used to go to him every now and then and tell him, sir, I have done this today. Sir, I have done that today. And he used to appreciate. Maybe he was laughing in his own world, how small things these boys are showing me. But that was really an inspiration. That was an encouragement. And then later on, when he took us to the United States for the first time, he really introduced us to the world, the vast world of science centers and science museums all over the world. He took us to United States, he took us to UK and several other places. And then he used to not just leave us alone, but he used to lead us from front. He used to take us to every exhibit and explain us the small intricacies of the exhibit, not just the scientific effect, but even the aesthetics of it, how the exhibit design is, how it has been illuminated, what are the background graphics or background information presented in the exhibit, and how the exhibit has been made interactive, how it is really going to appeal. The appealing factor also he used to really show us, and that really taught us the profession to whatever way we have learned in that much time. One more example I would like to cite here. It was a really novel experiment for all of us. One fine morning, he came up and said that we have to do dinosaurs exhibition in 3 months' time. And to be very frank, we didn't know what that challenge was. We couldn't even understand. But the kind of pressure he put on us almost every single day, progress, the work, the difficulties, the challenges, and overcoming the difficulties, that was really marvelous. And it was an example setting really exhibition. When the dinosaur exhibition was opened in Science City, Calcutta for the first time, every single day used to be a nightmare for us because the crowd that was thronging to the dinosaur exhibition was unimaginable. It was really beyond our capacity to handle that crowd. But we have seen Dr. Ghosh leading from the front. He used to sit at the ticket counter and sell tickets. And then at the when he used to submit how much money has been collected. I know at times he has paid money from his pocket even in that role. that one single exhibition has shown us that science centers or science museums can also generate a lot of revenue. And that gave us a confidence later on. And of course, Science City is an example, which Mr. Ramtil also mentioned, that last 24 years, it has been showing the way of how the science centers or science museums should function. I think in today's world, when there are several challenges, and especially in these times of the pandemic, when there are several restrictions all over the country, and the science centers or science museum visitors have gone down, I'm sure his inspiration or his guidance will also show the way how we can progress ahead. I also remember one small incident when we were repairing the planetarium in Calcutta. The German equipment, which was lying in the packing crates for more than 8 years, in environment of a godown in dusty and dirty and hot environment in Calcutta Planetarium, Calcutta place. He simply said that go and repair that instrument. We even didn't know the service manuals were in German. The engineers who had come from German, they had advised that they will not be able to repair this. It needs to be scrapped. But he said, nothing doing, it has to be done. And to be very frank, the team of NCSM engineers, with his inspiration, could set right that equipment in working order. And I'm sure that kept on functioning for many, many years beyond that. Though not to the fullest extent, but with whatever possible extent we could do. When the German engineers were advising that we must scrap that equipment then and there itself. But such are the decisions he used to take and take us along with him. I would say when the financial crisis also did exist in NCSM for some time, it happens. I think everyone really has to go through all such ups and downs. But even those times, he really showed us the way how to come out of that. When there are so many parties calling us almost every single day for payments, and without compromising on the work, without compromising on the quality of the exhibits, we could sail through all such difficult times only because of his inspiration. I still remember the way he used to hold my hand while designing the Science for Children gallery in Mumbai. What should be the graphics? How much should be the size of the label? All these things we have really learned from him. And of course, we were also inspired by so many leaders of the NCSM, Dr. Bakshi, Mr. Goswami, Mr. Mukherjee, and he only really introduced us to the international world. That really took us, that helped us in taking the science museum together. And of course, also passing on whatever we could learn from him to the younger generation. I really admire him and I wish him all the best once again. And I'm sure he will maintain his health and he will remain happy and healthy. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh, for also bringing us together on this platform today, where we could see a lot of our colleagues together. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing for your association with Dr. Ghosh. I'm really sorry that we are running short of time, so we have just one speaker and one recorded message. We have with us Dr. I.M. Perumal from Chennai, who was the executive director of Tamil Nadu Science and Technology Center in Chennai, and he superannuated in 2018. But he was instrumental in setting up science centers in the state of Tamil Nadu, which is in the southern part of India. And he has done. He's a close friend of NCSM and done a lot of work for science communication activities. Dr. Perumal, I will request you to be just crisp, and because we are running short of time. Yeah, you can unmute yourself. You can unmute and just, yeah, very brief here. Your sound is not coming. Yeah. No sound is coming. Sound is not coming. You can remove the headphone and then talk.
Dr. Ghosh, sir, now it's audible?
Yeah. Yes, you can speak, yeah.
Hello?
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead, please. Yeah.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. He's confused.
Hello?
Sir, you can just speak. Yeah, please go ahead.
Respected Director General National Council of Science Museum and other ex-Director General, friends from NCSM, good afternoon, namaskaram, vanakkam. It is a happiest occasion to meet all of them in one platform. At this juncture, I extend my happy birthday greetings to our Dr. Saroj Ghosh sir. And we all know that he is the doyen in the field of the science and technology movement in India. Sir has laid the foundation. We are enjoying the superstructure of the facilities. All the science movement in India originated and brainchild of Dr. Saroj Ghosh to reach the unreached, to reach the students, to reach the teachers, to reach the expert in other field of science. Various methods were adopted and implemented by him. Sir is the institution builder. Generally, National Council of Science Museum can bring all the facilities available in the foreign country. But one example is developing the science city, the brainchild of Dr. Saroj Ghosh, that everything should be in magnificent way so that it can be remembered by the children every time. And my association with Dr. Saroj Ghosh is during the year 1987, when I joined in the Tamil Nadu Science and Technology Center. I visited the BITM, Birla Industrial Technology Museum. At the time, he gave an appointment to meet him. Then immediately he advised me, and also he gave lot of mathematical explanation on the exhibits. But one thing I remember still in my mind is that centrifugal force exhibit. When the ball is at the top, it is balanced by means of centrifugal force and the gravitation force. Based on that only, we are deciding the radius, that is H is equal to R by 2. Still it is remembered. And also he told that wherever you go, you take the notes so that it will be useful. That is true. Whenever we visit museum, immediately the exhibits will be very friendly, and we'll have a confidence that we can fabricate. But when we go to our workplace and we think it's very difficult to fabricate, so at that time the notes will be very useful. Still, I am also following the suggestion given by Dr. Ghosh sir. And also Dr. Ghosh is a Bhishma in the field of the science and technology movement, and he occupied the position of the international ICOM for 2 terms. Here I want to tell the outside the NCSM people also, he helped a lot, because junior people and the middle level people also should attend the ICOM conference. So for that, he created the Corpus Fund. He has given the fund for their travel and hospitality. And also, I have also once utilized that grant also. Such kind of a visionary person also. And also, he got the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan award. And we pray God to give Padma Vibhushan award shortly for his dedicated work in the field of the science communication. And also here I want to mention another one more incident, that second Science World Congress was organized in Calcutta, because such kind of the magnificent event can be organized only by National Council of Science Museum. But SAR has laid the foundation for conducting such kind of huge event. It was a very helpful event. I attended the program. During that program, I learned a lot for developing the science museum and science exhibits. And here I want to tell one small incident also. When he was conducted regional ICOM conference in Chennai. He came to Chennai and he gave a lot of information on designing of exhibits also. And for his selfless, unselfish, sincere and devoted service, he accomplished the great science movement. Dr. Saroj Ghosh sir is a multi-personal personality and multifaceted genius, full of dynamism, vigor and foresight. Such quality paved the way to establish wonderful facilities in India. Here I want to tell fitting that couplet of Tirukkural, because in Tamil, Thiruvalluvar has written about 1330 couplets, only 7 words are there. With its simple words, I want to tell the word, Solludal yarkum eliya ariyava, solliya vannam seyal. The English translation is, to say how an act is to be performed is indeed easy for anyone, but far difficult it is to do according to what has been said. But in nutshell, whatever we say is easy, but executing the said word is not easy, difficult. But our friend, philosopher and guide, Dr. Saroj Ghosh, will accomplish whatever he says, and it will be materialized in short time. I pray God to shower their blessings with strong health and happiness always. I express my gratitude to DG NCSM for giving opportunity to see the ex-DGs and other friends in NCSM and Science Center movement fraternity invited in the virtual mode. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Perumal, for giving your insight into that and also sharing your experience. We come to the end of this session, and since we are running short of time, we thank all the speakers present in this session. I think it was valuable experience for all of us, and we learned a lot from from the sharing of experiences by all. After that, we have now, we'll go for the next session, which is also the acceptance speech by Dr. Ghosh. So I'll request Dr. Ghosh to give his acceptance speech and
Thank you. At the outset, I pay respect to my Guru, Mr. Omalindu Ghosh. You have heard his name from many of the speakers, and who nurtured me in this profession. I thank all of you, Hans, Moshe, and Marilyn, and all my colleagues who are attending this webinar here in this room and also online. It was really a pleasure for me to have worked with such wonderful people, my colleagues who are here, who are online. It was always a pleasure to work in a team. I would talk briefly on the subject of this seminar, which took me to the old days. The subject is Science Museum and Science Center movement. Now, this gives me an idea that Science Museum and Science Center are two different entities. And there is an effort in putting them together. So I remember the old controversy through which we passed. Briefly, I go back to 1959, Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, not Birla Science Museum. Birla Industrial and Technological Museum was set up in 1959. Mukherjee told us, and also I think Manekar and Rautela also told us, that when they joined the organization, they didn't know what is a science museum. I can tell very frankly, all of you, when we started the work, we didn't know what is a science museum. None of us at that time who were working in that team, small team, none of us, including Mr. Bose, has seen a science museum. And we were asked to develop a science museum and open it. I remember that day when B.C. Roy made a surprise visit on a Saturday afternoon, saw some small experimental gadgets that we had in our rooms and said, open the museum in 6 months. It was a tall order. Opening the museum in 6 months without any exhibit, without any workshop. Because I remember my first job after joining was to cash purchase a plier and a screwdriver to start with. And we had to set up a science museum in 6 months. None of us has seen a science museum. All that we had on our desk through Mr. Bose is the exhibit catalogs of Deutsches Museum Munich, Science Museum London, the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. 3 premier organizations at that time. And many of the things in the exhibit catalog meant nothing to me. I still remember there was one exhibit mentioned there in Deutsches Museum Munich, Wuppertal monorail. So I got very surprised. What is this Wuppertal monorail? Who is this Wuppertal? Was he a man, a scientist, engineer? Was it a place? Was it the name of a technology? What is this Wuppertal? Like that, we have already talked about 2 other institutions which were open to public before BITM. A small exhibition hall in National Physical Laboratory, primarily a traveling exhibit from UNESCO on senses, our senses, and a mixture of exhibits on agriculture, industries, and art objects, predominantly with dioramas, excellent dioramas that Mr. Berry and his assistant were making in Pilani. We saw these 2 institutions and we realized that our museum is going to be different. But what kind of, we were not sure. Whatever we thought through discussions amongst us, we did that. Birla Industrial and Technological Museum was opened in 1959. What were the exhibits at that time? Orijit was asking me the other day over telephone. I remember one hall on nuclear physics. The entire exhibit was 2-dimensional graphics, photographs, and some write-ups, with only 2 exceptions. One is still layout model of Calder Hall. I still remember that. and one working exhibit, you can call it, a GM counter, and a small sample of pitch blend. And this was the rotating. And when the pitch blend coming in line with the GM counter, the GM counter was giving the tick, 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 tick sound. That's the end. Just a few chance collected stationary steam engines. And one gallery, we call it electronics. It had nothing to do with science of electronics or technology of electronics. It was an electronics gimmick that was done by me from my earlier experience in Jadavpur University annual exhibition. And the exhibits were very fascinating, attractive. Bar-glass alarm, you approach a safe and the alarm rings, automatic water tap, you stretch your hand near the water tap, water flows down. And most fascinating exhibit was that electronic room that a visitor comes and says, hello, the sliding door opens.
Open the door.
So he enters, cuts a photoelectric path, the light glows. He takes his seat on a chair and the lights are changed. The tail lamp is lit, the radio starts. When he comes out and says, bye, everything closes down. Long, long before those sliding doors of malls that you see today, it was something like surprising to visitors. The visitors were very much attracted. We knew very much were there. We are not talking about science. We are not talking about technology. We are not talking about industries through these exhibits. But we are catching the people. The most important exhibit was television studio. And it was an old image iconoscope camera, a kind of dinosaur in closed-circuit television. Image iconoscope camera and a huge panel that was brought by Philips to an industrial exhibition in Delhi, and then they did not want to take it back, left it here. Philips donated that one. It became very attractive. There was only one TV at Delhi at that time. No TV at Calcutta. So the visitors coming over there, getting inside the TV studio, performing there, singing, reciting, and all his family members and friends from outside enjoying. It was very interesting thing. So we started with that. After opening of the museum, Mr. Bose went on a study trip to know what is a science museum. UNESCO sponsored, UNESCO fellowship, 9 months study trip to Europe. Before he left, we sat down. I remember Mr. P.M. Neogi, Shashanko Ghosh, myself, R.C. Chandra, and Sunil Ghosh was in charge of the workshop that is being built, and worked out our plan, what we will do in 9 months, make a lot of exhibits, the kind of exhibits we were thinking at that time, so that whenever Mr. Bose comes back, we will be ready for opening new gallery. I remember the first letter that Mr. Bose sent after a month from Europe. It landed as a bombshell to us. He wrote us, stop everything. We are going completely on a wrong track. Don't make any exhibit until I go back. But build up the infrastructure as quickly as possible. Build up a very good workshop, a good electrical and electronics laboratory, a very good display an art studio. Get ready for a big job. Mr. Bose came back. That is the time after his return, Mr. Bakshi joined us in the team. And it was in 1962, in my opinion, we first built real science museum galleries, the mining and metallurgy, the communication and electronics. Yes. Now, and one section on popular science. But what I'm talking about, the difference was that here in 1962, we built up galleries with the real artifact collection and working didactic exhibits, a good combination of that one, which still guides us. A good combination of artifacts and working exhibits. We went on a period 1965 to 70, the period of extension activities outside the museum. Mr. Bakshi gave a detailed account of that one. Mobile science exhibition, science demonstration lecture, creative ability center, teachers training program, science fair, science seminar, so on. But for our concept on museums, we stuck to that Deutsches Museum concept of combination of artifacts and working exhibits, not hands-on exhibits, working exhibits, push-button operated. With that concept, we opened Vishesharaya Industrial and Technological Museum in 1965. It was on principle and a mirror image of the ICOM, but the contents were different. Concept was the same, the contents were different. So it was going on. Then worldwide, there came a big change. In 1968, the Exploratorium opened public. And 1 year after, in 1969, Centennial Science Center, now known as Ontario Science Center in Canada, in Toronto, came up. Came up with the concept of hands-on exhibits. Now there are a lot of details about the difference between these two, working exhibits and hands-on exhibits. Working push-button exhibit is you consider a unidimensional exhibit. That means the designer has a message. He puts that in the exhibit and the visitor presses the button. The exhibit behaves in the same manner 20,000 times you operate the exhibit. But when we come to the concept of hands-on exhibits, the exhibit does not behave in the same manner. It depends on the manner by which the visitor will operate this. For example, this famous exhibit of centrifugal force, somebody mentioned over there. Roll a ball, this moves like this and goes out. Centrifugal force, it traverses through the loop, doesn't drop down. Okay. First, it was a push-button exhibit everywhere so that the balls are not stolen. Push-button exhibit. Every time you push the button, the ball rolls down from the top and goes like that. When we put it in the hands-on format, big exhibit in Science Park later on, in hands-on format, we found the people are not operating in the same manner every time. Some people trying to find out what would be the optimum height at which the ball can be released so that it doesn't drop down. Not necessarily they release the ball from the top. They move a little bit down. They are doing that one. Nobody instructed them and trying to find out, well, from here, the ball just traverses the path. Below that one, it falls down. I still remember, I found some young children in one of our science parks. They were trying to roll the ball from below, whether the ball can traverse this in the opposite direction and move up. That was very interesting. He was not able to do that one until he learned by doing this experiment that if he, while releasing the ball, if he rolls the ball and releases it, it traverses. But if he pushes that one, it doesn't traverse. Like that, the difference between these two, they came first to the attention of the International Science Museum community in 1968 and 1969. We were still in dilemma in early 1970s, which way to go. Remember that our first two museums were not science museums by name. It was Industrial and Technological Museum. These names, we did not give the names. The names were given by somebody else and thrust upon us. Some industrialists outside. But when we started thinking, not exactly planning yet, thinking about a possible big museum in Bombay, the first name was given Mafatlal Scientific and Technological Museum. Industry was replaced by the term scientific. Mafatlal donated 75 lakh of rupees to CSIR. CSIR didn't do that one. After some time, Mafatlal took the money back and so on and so on. Forget about that history. When we thought now, time has come for us, we were still in CSIR at that time, time has come for us to build a new big museum in Bombay. We named it, not somebody else. We named it, and we named it Nehru Science Center. Do you understand the difference? We were running two industrial and technological museums all the time. But by that time, we were exposed to the ideas of Exploratorium and Centennial Science Center. Then, by this time, during that period, R.N. Chakraborty was sent to Centennial Science Center on an UNESCO fellowship for 9 months as understudy. He came back completely transformed. 3 years I was in the Smithsonian Institution, made several visits to Exploratorium. I had a different thing in my mind. And slightly at a later stage, 1980, Mr. Bagchi visited Exploratorium and some other science centers. He was converted. So three of our senior people. Three of our senior people. Three of us were convinced that, well, the things in the making, things which are coming are activity-oriented, hands-on exhibits, science-centered. So, when we were talking about Bombay, we were talking about Nehru Science Center. Now came 1978, when we were separated from CSIR and we had to develop a new umbrella organization. Nobody gave the name. They said an umbrella organization who will take care of this. I remember we sat for hours discussion in Mr. Bose's room in Birla Museum. What should be the name of this organization? And we all agreed Mr. Bakshi was there, myself, Mr. Bose. We agreed the name should be National Council of Science Museums, not Industrial and Technological Museums. National Council of Science Museums and not National Council of Science Centers. Although we had in our mind of Nehru's Science Center, but that was in mind. That was not even in papers at that time. What we had before us, two very good standing to Industrial and Technological Museum. So the museum was a reality and Science Center was not a reality to us. So we named this as National Council of not Science Centers, but National Council of Science Museums, although whatever institutions NCSM built from that on, they are all science centers. NCSM has National Council of Science Museums, has not built a single science museum.
So we can change it as
after that.
National Council of Science Center.
No, that is National Science Center in Delhi. Nehru Science Center, National Science Center, Sri Krishna Science Center, all regional science centers, district science center, they were all named like that, science centers. But what was the concept? The concept was still, our attention was not taken away from the artifacts. We were still going for collection. We were still enriching our galleries with collection. But we are making lots of hands-on exhibits, name them as science centers. Now, this confusion, we had this dichotomy in our mind, science museum or science center. This dichotomy was all over the world, I find. Any of the old science museums, they didn't like science centers. They thought science centers are not museums. But the whole thing changed towards the end of 1980s. First one, I personally think it was a big change in approach. That exhibit-based, artifact-based Science Museum London developed one full hands-on interactive gallery, Launchpad. It was a very big. And similarly, the exhibit artifact-based Smithsonian Institution built up their first hands-on hall during that time. So the whole division between Science Museum and Science Center, that watertight compartment was breaking down. And then in 1989, International Council of Museum, when they made their new statutes, they put a new definition for a museum, and then they included science centers, zoological gardens, botanical gardens, similar planetaria, similar kinds of public exhibition areas, all of them under the generic term of museum. All of them are to be considered museum. So our confusion was gone at that time. So it was a generic term. Like science became a generic term. People in history of science, they believe science is different from applied science. Applied science is different from technology. Technology is different from industry. They are all different institutions by themselves. But to a common man, you ask him, he will say all of them are science. Science is a generic term before. Similarly, museum became a generic term of all of them. Some of them are called not science museums, transport museums. Some of them are called communication museum, different names. Even in science centers, Exploratorium is not called a science center by name. In Denmark, Explanatorium is not called a science center. Necessarily not that the name would be a science center. So the name does not signify anything really big in that way. What is important is your approach to that institution, and that difference between Science Museum and Science Center broke down in 1989, and lots of museums, old science museums, they came up with interactive science centers. They still retain their name as museum, but had the hands-on science center exhibits in themselves. So I briefly touched on this point. This is a very major issue which kept busy the museologists all over the country, the science center experts all over the world. It kept them busy. But very simply, that it is not a watertight, to me, it is not a watertight demarcation. There is no watertight demarcation between Science Museum and Science Center. Science Museum, the term is generic. It includes Science Center. It includes many other things. Well, with this thing, I stop, but I will just take two minutes more. When I was coming, I told Indranil that there are a lot of very fascinating stories here. I would say that for collections, there are very, very interesting stories. I'll tell you very quickly. In 1965, we saw in the newspaper an ad. Maharaja of Darbhanga is going to sell his fleet of some 30 or so Rolls Royce, all by auction in Walford, in Park Street. So we were very much excited. Rolls Royce, can we have one for Birla Museum? Now they would be sold in auction. How could we buy that in auction? We have to have 3 tenders. We cannot buy that one. So I requested the chairman of the executive council at that time, MP Birla. He had a different mind. He was not a government bureaucrat. He said, okay, we will permit you, executive council will permit you to bid in that auction. But there should be a maximum value fixed. So they fixed, the executive council, he consulted other members and fixed 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees would be bid for a Rolls Royce. So I went there with great hope to Walford. That was a Sunday morning, I remember, still remember that. The auction started from 50,000 on. Done 1, 2, 3, 4, all 30 Rolls Royce sold in probably 2 to 3 hours' time. And I sat like this, completely frustrated. And then somebody patted me like this. I turned out, found a tall white man. Later on, I learned that he was the last managing director of Metal Box, last British managing director of Metal Box. He said, young man, I was 30 years old at that time, young man, have you come here to buy a Rolls Royce? I looked at him and said, yes. May I know? He introduced himself. I forgot his name. He told me he is the managing director of Metal Box. May I know your identity? I told him about my museum, and I wanted to have a Rolls Royce for our museum. He again patted me like that. You will have one. Go. And 2-3 days after that, I was walking in my office, and the security man, fat Bharat Singh, came running to me with full excitement. And then told me something. I came out. I saw the same gentleman driving a Rolls Royce of his, driving a Rolls Royce. I remember he was wearing a short. It was very hot summer day, wearing a short, nothing here on this. Jumped down from the Rolls Royce, handed over me the key. This is the key. This is your car. My people would give you the transfer documents tomorrow. And then he rode another car behind, went away. That was the story of a collection of a Rolls Royce as free gift.
1926 Silver Phantom.
2 minutes more.
Nehru's wristwatch.
Huh?
Nehru's wristwatch.
Nehru's wristwatch. No, 2 minutes more. Funny stories. Another news item appeared in newspaper showing a Fiat of 1923 in a dilapidated condition, the tires resting on the ground, kacha ground, bushes all around. The shade on the top is broken in some places, giving clear idea that rainwater comes in. And the news was that this is the car driven by our scientist, Sir J.C. Bose, after his death by Lady Abola Bose, now in this condition in Bose Institute. I immediately ran to Bose Institute, met the then director, Professor D.M. Bose, J.C. Bose's nephew. Told him, requested him, would you please give this car to us? And he was so angry. He said, I know this newspaper reporter has done this damage. And you mean that I am incapable of maintaining Sir J.C. Bose's car? It would be an insult on me if I give it to you. No, you go. I came back, I told him, but still I would call. I continuously called him almost every week. Sir, how are you? How are you doing now? All right, everything is fine with you? Sir, have you thought anything about that car? Like that, I went on. Then one day he lost his patience. He said, okay, show me the place where you would keep it. So he came and I earmarked that place in that new transport hall which was to come there. This is the place I have earmarked for J.C. Bose's car. He liked that one. He said, okay, you had the car. The car came. This is not the end of the story. This is like a double-barrel gun. After we put it up, we got another person over there who polished the car and did some small repair work. And it was a nice display. I called DM Bose. DM Bose came again, saw that one, and expressed his happiness. I'm very happy. Then, after some time, I read in the newspaper, Professor DM Bose died. Okay. After a few months, maybe a couple of months, an unknown person came to see me in Birla Museum. He came, identified himself as DM Bose's son. He said that my father expressed his wish that after his death, his Chevrolet of 1935 to be given to the ITM. You take it. He kept in his mind that this is the place who kept J.C. Bose's car so nicely. So this is the place where my car probably. Like that, there are lots of stories. I stop here. Point is that collection by itself is a very fascinating work, And if you lay your hands in it, you'd find real pleasure. Thank you.
Wonderful.
sir, for
Rolls Royce getting is the greatest thing.
free gift.
That too without dress.
Free gift. Thank you, sir, for sharing so many valuable experiences and your journey in the science museum field. And probably all of us are benefited by that, and especially the young generation who is there. They will be really, it will be enriching experience for them. And I think, we hope that we'll get such kind of sharing of thoughts in coming years also from all of our senior colleagues who are present here in the audience. We are running short of time, sir, and we thank you very much, sir, for coming here. And I think we have a lot of guests from all over India and abroad. We have with Dr. Vikas Sinha, who is also closely associated with you. And he'll be starting the next session. Mr. Ramchandran will take over from for the next session. Yeah, Mr. Ramchandran.
Yeah, going. Yes, going on.
Okay, he's not there. Probably take a break for that. And
He's supposed to start from
5:30, sir.
5:30.
Yeah.
It's already
20 minutes.
6.
Yes.
Will he be waiting?
He is there.
Please tell him. Yeah.
I beg to be excused. I have to leave.
कुछ बोल रहा है
5 मिनट का ब्रेक दीजिएगा सर, लाइव के लिए चेंज करना होगा नेक्स्ट सेशन का.
Okay.
5 मिनट में सो
Dr. Vikas Sinha is there.
Yes. Can you ask him to excuse for 5 minutes?
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Good evening from all of us here, sir. Yeah, your mic is muted, sir.
Quickly, we can come back.
Your mic is muted, sir.